Good afternoon. I am here to welcome all our visitors to the Chico State Podcast, Life Sketches. Today, I'm honored to introduce you to Dr. Brent MacKay. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. And he and his family are longtime residents of Paradise, and he is also a well-known dentist, retired 3 years.
Yes.
In the area. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Brent MacKay.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you, Janice. I've known you for many years also. And many years ago, you helped my wife and I go through a little bit of a rough patch in our married life. And yesterday, we celebrated the 52nd anniversary of our wedding many years ago. And I guess you must have helped us out a lot.
Well, there wasn't much to help out. You did all the work, just a few little assignments, and there you go, and look where you are today.
Well, it's a team
effort.
effort.
Proud of team effort
Thank
for you and your wife. You
Thank
betcha,
you for everything.
Janine. So, to get to know you better, and the more I got to know you too, with meeting with you and getting your history, I'm honored, just really honored to interview you. You're a grand man. And so first we'd like to have you tell us a little bit about your early years, moving with your family throughout the country because your father was a doctor. Mm-hmm. Can we start there?
Well, my father was in the public health service. The time he spent in that was to pay back some time that the armed services helped him with getting through medical school at the University of Utah. So we started really in Hawaii a long time ago. My older sister, was born in Hawaii. And then my twin brother, I have a twin brother, we spent some time in Hawaii when we were about 2 years old. He moved back to Hawaii after moving to Utah for a year, and then moved back there to do some residency. And so then from there, we just kept moving around. He had several places. When I was 3 years old, in New Orleans, Louisiana, and about 5 years old, it was New York, and then Seattle, and then San Francisco, and Utah, and California. And so by the time I was in junior high, we finally moved down to Southern California, where I went to junior high and high school. So that was the real reason why we moved around a lot.
And I bet that was difficult moving around, not knowing anyone, and for a short period of time. And I did not know you had a twin brother.
Well, it's good to find that out, isn't it?
It is, because he was probably your best friend, so wherever you went, you were comfortable.
Well, that made a big difference to me. Now, I have an older sister, as I mentioned, and she's a very forward kind of person that just took care of everything along with mother. And so we kind of worked that together. And then we had a younger family that were a little younger that came in the household. And we have there was a total of 6 children in the family. And but for those many years at the beginning, the 3 of us and my mother and father went through much of those moves until Southern California, basically.
What's the age difference between your older sister and the twins, you and your brother?
2 years.
2 years, okay. Well, that was pretty much, she was given a lot of responsibility.
Well, she was. And she liked it, I think. But we made it through very nicely that way.
So your father being a doctor, did he influence your decision to become a dentist?
Oh, definitely. I could see that he enjoyed what he did. I could see that he enjoyed helping people and making their lives better. He's a great physician. In fact, until he was close to passing away at 95, he was still reading medical books. And so that was one of the reasons why I looked into medicine.
But you didn't choose to be an MD?
No, I chose to be a dentist, and part of the reason was when I was in the mission field in Germany as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I decided at that time through prayer and fasting that I would maybe continue to be in the medical field, but because of my father's experiences as a physician, he sometimes having patients not make it through surgery. which was hard at times for him.
I bet that was
And then always on call, and leaving the house at midnight or 2 in the morning. Most of the time I was never up at that time, but my mother was often up at that time. And I also saw that he had less time for the family and for the church, which I thought, well, what about dentistry? And I prayed about it, and I thought, well, I think that would help me have more time for the church, have more time for my family, and I don't think it would ever involve anybody that would pass away. So I decided before I even got home from a mission, and from then day on, I decided right then to continue on.
So it was
in that field.
personal revelation is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
It's just what you needed to do.
No question about it. It was revealed to me that's what I should do.
So, question to you is, you met your wife. How did you meet her? How did you know she was the one? What was your first
impression? That was even before the mission.
Right.
So, yes, I met her in
But you got married after the mission, right?
Well, yes, we did.
Okay.
But we were in high school. I met her. She was in my history class, and she sat about 2 chairs in front of me, and she had this nice long brown hair. And I thought, she looks pretty nice. And I still hadn't been on a date. I was kind of a little bashful back then. And I decided, well, I might consider maybe talking to her more. And so but there was a kind of a time when in that history class that I was kind of at a panel discussion about kind of how to handle censorship, really. And I was kind of really remembered what the church said about what love is and how we should be careful with that and how we should handle one another. And my future wife, Janine, decided she would ask me about that after the discussion in the class.
Because she thought you were cute, probably?
Yeah, that's right. And so I said, well, it probably comes from the church I belong to. Now,
so Janine she was, what, 17 or 16? Or?
This must have been about 16, 17
years old.
Yeah. And so she talked to me about it. Then in high school, or during the senior year, that fall, I decided to give her a Book of Mormon. Well, she was
out of the blue?
Out of the blue, at the locker room. So I decided, well, I think she's kind of nice. Maybe I should get to know her a little more. Of course, before that, she had tried to invite me to a dance, vice versa dance, but I got embarrassed, or I got shy, and I decided not to go.
How did you get out of it?
I had to babysit my brother, who was already 10 years old. So. But I said, I'm supposed to babysit for my family, and so I got out of it. And then I decided to try to invite her in 12th grade.
So was this a whole year that went by?
Yes, it went, and we hadn't dated yet.
So you weren't rushing into it?
I didn't rush into it. In the 12th grade, I decided, well, I'll invite her to a church hayride. Well, I found another excuse. My family decided...
After you invited her this time.
And after I know. So I had to try to figure out, how did I get out of that one? I wanted to go kind of, but my family was going to Utah for a visit during Christmas. And that was when the hayride was. And I decided to go with the family at that time. And so...
So you uninvited yourself to go with her?
I did. I kind of said, my folks want to go to Utah. I didn't know about that. I'm sorry, I can't do it this time. So she decided, well, I don't know about him. He's kind of slow on this dating scene. And so her mother said, well, you better, I don't know if he'll ever decide to go on a date you, but you better try one more time. And so she invited me to the vice versa dance in 12th grade. And I decided, okay.
2 years after that.
I know. I was kind of slow. But I went to that with her, and I even held her hand. So I thought that was pretty good. And she was my first date, true date. And she's been my date ever since.
And let's see, would you say 52 years?
52 years
52 years yesterday. Yep. And how many children?
We have 4 children. And 12 grandchildren.
Wonderful.
Unfortunately, one of our grandchildren passed away, our oldest child.
It's going to be really hard, I'm sure.
It was hard.
Oh. We expect to have them outlive us, and that's tough.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest time I've ever had in my life so far, to have a grandchild pass away when she was 17. And she doesn't feel that his life was quite what she wanted anymore. And so it was very difficult for the family, and my wife, my daughter, of course,
Everyone.
and her husband. So, but fortunately, there's another child there in that family, and she's doing well. She has a beautiful voice, and it was hard on her too, having her older sister pass away.
Well, and with your belief system too, I am sure that carried it through. Tell me a little bit about your belief system around death, unexpected death.
Oh, there's no question that carries you through, and without the church, I think it would have been much harder. And when believing in our Savior and believing in the hereafter, no question about it.
And that you'll be reunited again.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to be there, be able to do that, and trying to follow the gospel and try to follow the commandments, yes.
So, Paradise, a long time you've been a resident there. What brought you to Paradise?
Well, as you said, we've been there a long time, 45 and a half years as a dentist.
45 of the 52.
Yeah, and now it's, we've been since 1976 when we came to Paradise. So it's even longer. So been retired now for a year and a half. So.
Oh, I thought it was 3 years, so it's a year and a half.
No, a year and a half.
I stand corrected.
That's okay. But, and I've enjoyed that too. But I do have my dental nightmares every once in a while.
How so?
Well, I couldn't get a tooth out in my dream, and then I got stuck and trying to get through that. And I'm glad to wake up and find out that I'm not there, right there, trying to take care of that.
You didn't have to go there
But I
anymore.
enjoyed my practice all those years. I had wonderful patients, wonderful personnel that worked for me. So there's no complaint at all. So I'm glad I was able to do that.
What are your favorite memories growing up when your children were young in Paradise?
When we first came to Paradise, we had a son. He was born while I was at USC Dental School. So he was 2 years old when we came to Paradise. And then
We have to back up just a little bit.
Yes.
Going to USC Dental School is really tough to get in.
It is tough to get in. It's interesting. I think that I had a good interview. And I was glad that I had the ability to have an interview, and so I think that helped a lot to get into USC. And fortunately, my father was able to help, and we had loans that got us that taken care of. And I think I was about 41 when I got that loan taken care of. So,
oh wow!
So I was glad I had a job when I got out of dental school.
So how did you get the job in Paradise?
Well, that's interesting. The dentist here in Paradise by the name of Charles Larson, and some of you may know him, had been in Paradise some years before, had a medical center across the street from where my prison office was, or is now, and now sold. But he heard that I was looking for a dentist or maybe an associateship. So he, knowing my family since I was 3 years old, in New Orleans, because he was also in public health service. And so he knew my family that long and invited my father and mother to move to Paradise in 1969 while I was in Germany in a mission from Northridge. And so he heard about it and he decided, well, maybe he'd like to be an associate. And so I came up and decided, since I had very little money at that time and I needed a job, I thought, well, I love Paradise. My folks are here in Paradise. We'll try it. And that's what brought me to Paradise.
Wow. You must have loved it. It's a beautiful place.
Well, Paradise has been, even right then, I had visited Paradise when I was 16. My folks had come up, and that was kind of the motivation for them to come up to Paradise. He had friends up here like Charles Larson.
So a group of people came up before you was settled. Okay.
Yeah, and they had built that medical center. Unfortunately, that burned down with fire. But they had that medical center and made that medical center, and multiple doctors and a few dentists were in that medical center. And so I was able to be right there with my dad. He was just around the corner, and he was working in his office, and I worked with Charles Larson for about a 10-month period. And then I moved right next door. The office right next door to Dr. Larson opened up, and I decided to go ahead and be on my own. And so I was for about 20 years there.
So you had some mentoring, is what you're saying.
Yes, for about 10 months. Although USC teaches you well, and I remember I think I had 22 boards to go through in my senior year, so they definitely help you feel comfortable in doing your work. So I don't think he got as much. I didn't get as much mentoring from him as he thought he was going to give me.
Because you already knew it.
Well, I think it just was. I felt comfortable being able to go forward.
You felt confident. Yeah.
Yes, I had the confidence to continue to go forward.
So you served a mission in Germany.
I did.
Tell us about it. And then I want to know how that worked in with high school, meeting your wife, Janine.
Well, yes,
and then a mission, and how did that all come together?
Well, we both went to UC Irvine after high school, and my twin brother also, and he was our chauffeur after, because I was getting to know Janine even better. Been on a few dates then, and so we talked and we discussed my future. She knew that I would probably go to mission. Oh, by the way, she was baptized right out of high school, and I was able to baptize her in the church.
Now, who gave her the lessons? Were you involved in giving her the lessons?
No, I didn't really know that she was taking lessons. I had referred her name, but she had some sister missionaries that were teaching her in her home. Her parents didn't want to take lessons, but they offered for her to take it.
Did they ever join the church, or
They
parents?
never did, and that was a sad part, that they weren't able to see that would be beneficial. But they were good parents and treated their family quite well overall. Tried to help them get through their lives. She has a brother and a sister. So anyway, she decided, I told her I was going to go on a mission. I got a call, going to go on the mission to Germany. And she said, that's great. Have a good time.
Did you ask her to wait for you?
Well, I didn't, but she wanted to wait for me. So she decided to wait for me. And so after I got back from mission, I gave her after about 3 months of working to make enough money for a wedding ring, I gave her a wedding ring, which my grandmother chose because she worked at ZCMI here in Utah. Oh. And so I was able to give that to her right before I went back to BYU, which was also interesting. But we did get engaged before I went back to BYU.
So you went on your mission, came back, gave her a ring, and then left again.
Off I went to BYU.
She was stalwart and waiting for you.
She was a stalwart. She was at the airport when I got off the plane from my mission. So, but she waited. She went to school full time both summers, and then I came back after I went the semester at BYU. I came back to Southern California, and went to Cal State Northridge, which was San Fernando Valley State College back then, and finished up some of my undergraduate work before I was accepted to USC Dental School. And we got married that summer in June, 52 years ago. And so that was a wonderful time because we got married in the Los Angeles temple.
That's a beautiful temple.
It is.
So what exactly is the wedding date? You said what was
the 26th of June, which was yesterday.
Yesterday. That's what, okay. And the Los Angeles temple is a beautiful temple.
It is a beautiful temple. It's a big temple, but it is a beautiful temple. And she looked beautiful.
And she does today, too.
I would agree with you completely.
Yes. So who has inspired you most in your adult life?
My mother and father were certainly instrumental in my life. They were wonderfully caring people and treated people with great love and care. And my mother and father always called the 6 children their best friends and kept that all their lives. And we felt that. And sweet people. And also my Savior, my best friend there. I keep him in my mind all the time. And of course, my dear wife has been truly instrumental in getting me through this life here. And
I'm sure you help each other. I mean, together.
I'm grateful for her.
Stalwart, yeah.
We've made a great pair.
So you're together and you're in the fire.
Yes.
And which was such a tragedy for so many people. Can you share what you've learned from being in that fire? And I know you were separated from your wife and your family and your daughter and granddaughters, children. I know you were in your office.
Yes, I was working that morning. I usually get there about 7:45 in the morning. My wife was home. And I'd actually, just before I got to her office, I had taken some of my grandchildren to elementary school. And so I knew they were there. But as it's about 15,
Right there in Paradise, the kids were there.
right there in Paradise. My daughter and son lived in Paradise at that time. My daughter, Becky, and you may know her, lives here with her family. My son used to live here in Chico, but they moved to Tahoe. So they were here. So 7 of our grandchildren lived right in the Paradise at the time. But we got word that the fire was coming, and we first didn't know. We thought it was just down in the river area.
And there's been many fires, but it wasn't
we've
like
had
this.
multiple fires
Over
down
time?
in Concow area, which is down by a river way down the valley, or down in the river area. But this was a different fire. A lot of wind. I think it was about 55 mile per hour wind, and it just swept the fire right up the canyon. And so we finally got word actually from a few patients. I don't think we can come now because we got a fire going. And so we came. I decided to close the office. Told everybody better get home, I think. And so I started home, and I never made it home. I got stuck because we lived right above the hospital, Feather River Hospital. And so I was trying to get up past the hospital, but they were excavating or taking people out of the hospital, all the patients.
Didn't you say they were in the doctors' and nurses' cars trying to get them out? And
that's
trying
right.
Was that heart pounding for you to think, my goodness, these, how am I going to get home and get to my family?
I thought that, well, they're taking care of it. The person I was worried most about was my wife, and I couldn't get home. And so I didn't
Could you
know.
reach her on the cell phone?
Yes, I got to hear from her and my daughter, Becky. My son had made it down the hill earlier, decided to go earlier, but my daughter was just about 30 minutes before I left.
And your son made it down because he worked in Chico. Is that why he was
Yes,
left early? Okay.
Becky's husband was down in Chico working, so she had to gather the kids, get them from
school?
The school. Fortunately, my daughter-in-law brought the kids back to Becky, and then they went down, and then Becky got things ready, and she decided to go then try to make the effort. She went through fire several times, and then my wife, I got word from her at about 9:20 in the morning, and she said to me, and she's the most worried, they're spraying my car down now. I think I'm going to make it. And then there was no more talking on the phone because
it cut.
Everything went down. Nobody could get any hold of anybody. The last time I heard from her was at 4:30 in the afternoon that she was going to make it down the hill then. And I was so grateful. I had prayed and really thought, well, that she would make it down the hill. And she did. And fortunately, my son and daughter and everybody made it down the hill. And I went through fire twice, finally made it down the hill too. But I wasn't so much worried about me. I was worried about her.
Well, some people said that it was so dark in Paradise, it was like midnight.
Oh, there was no question. In fact, while I was sitting there waiting for cars to go forward, I thought, I can't see more than about 5 feet ahead of me. I can just see maybe the headlight of the car in front of me. This reminds me of the time in the Book of Mormon when it says, right after Christ's death, that it was darker. In fact, it was so dark that nobody could see anything, and for 3 days they couldn't see it. So I was glad I didn't have it for 3 days, but that's what it reminded me, and that's what I thought of while I was just sitting there trying to get out of the Paradise.
So glad you made it, and your family probably felt like it was Armageddon.
I'm sure they felt a little differently because they
were probably worried about you too.
They were. Becky called me a couple times and thought I was going to make it because I was behind her about 30 minutes. But she kind of told me kind of what she was doing, and then everything went dead. So we had to make it out on our own. My wife, fortunately, was taken up by those fire engine. They took them up to Kmart parking lot, which a lot of people, in fact, most of the patients from the hospital stayed up there with doctors and nurses and everything. And that's where they stationed them until they were able to get down the hill.
Get them down. Now, you have served in the church a lot. And I know you were a grand bishop for like 6.5 years.
I was.
So what was your favorite calling? You've had so many, and I know you're executive secretary right now, and you were on going 2 years mission
Yep.
for the Bishop Storehouse. So what was your favorite calling and why?
Well, to be frank with you, the bishop was one of my favorite, truly my favorite calling.
The most time consuming, I'm sure.
Most time consuming, but I had tremendous help. Wonderful counselors that stayed with me for 6.5 years. And so they were tremendous. In fact, the Bishop of Paradise right now is the counselor that I had as one of my counselors.
You trained him well. You trained him well.
Well, I don't know. He trained me well, I think, but we both trained each other, but we had a great time.
Is there any experience that was really stood out in?
Well, I remember one mother call and asked me to meet her son, who was at that time an adult, young adult, and had chosen different paths. The parents were converts to the church. He had chosen a different path, and he was having a hard time, and the mother was worried about him. And so she asked me.
Most mothers are. I mean,
So she asked me to go down there to the church parking lot. He was just there, kind of troubled and worried about his life, and was considering other things. And I just had a good talk with him. We were able to just sort of work it out, and he decided to go back home. At that time, he had kind of left, and then a few years later, I understand that he joined the church, and active member of the church. And it was
so there's some
it's kind
input.
of a nice thing to know that maybe a few words I may have said and the spirit that guided that instance helped them move forward in this life.
And I'm sure Heavenly Father guided you. If you could only do 3 more things in your life bucket list. Now, I kind of know you've done one bucket list recently. Can you share about that?
Well, yeah, I just did one of them just last month. My wife and I went to Israel and Jordan. My wife always wanted to go there to see where Christ walked on the earth. And it was a great trip. We went through a company that's based in Utah, and so they sort of had it all worked out. They had a former professor from BYU, basically tell us all where we were and what we're doing, and told us if this was the site where Christ was laid in the tomb. We also we got word that about Bethlehem and Nazareth, and so we were able to go through a lot of those sites and really feel the presence of our Savior.
You feel the Spirit. It's pretty strong.
Absolutely. And one of the highlights was where we were able to spend some time in the BYU Jerusalem Center. And it's amazing, but
I heard it is an absolutely
you can look.
must-see.
They have beautiful windows in front of the building, and this is a good-sized building. And it's placed up the hill where you can actually see the Garden of Gethsemane, the whole old town of Jerusalem, the wall, the wall where the Jews go, the Wailing Wall.
Wailing Wall.
Where the Golden Dome mosque is for the Muslims, and the Israel, actually 3 religions there, Christian.
So it's like a movie, but you're looking out the window at it all.
Oh, it was wonderful. So we really enjoyed that, and we had a great time there. So a couple more times I'd like to be up at MacKay in Idaho. I like to fish. I like to fly fish particularly. And been there multiple times. In fact, I went up there when I was about 16 years old. And my father particularly, as a fly fisherman. So we went up there and did some fly fishing. And my other brothers, I have my twin brother and my 2 other brothers, went up there. And actually my sister's been up there too, and my wife's been up there. So I'd like to go there a couple more times and do a little more fly fishing. And then the third one, if the Savior comes while I'm still here on earth, I want to be able to be there when he comes. And that would be a place I want to be, and be able to greet him and be able to feel of his presence, which I sort of felt in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem. You are a grand man. I know there's other things that we probably haven't hit on this time, but if more people could get to know you, by this and the other things that didn't quite come out in the interview yet.
Well, I just want to keep my, hopefully keeping my loving and responsible attitude and my faithful attitude to keep going and keep trying. I've always said there's a silver lining in everything we do, and I've always tried to live that, and I've appreciated being here with you.
Thank you. One more thing. Let's
Yes.
just back up. What is maybe one thing you want to leave behind for those that know you and for your family? And then I think we touched quite a bit then.
Well, let them know that by listening well, it's usually a great way to handle life. And I haven't done as well as I'd like to, and I'm still working on that. I think it's going to take 1,000,000 years before I get that taken care of. But try to keep listening and learning. Try to keep the faith and keep faith. We all need faith, whether we're religious or not, but we need to have faith to keep going in life. And remember that you can have peace by doing that, and having the Savior in your life helps pass that along and get you through this life. I've learned that. Fortunately, I've learned it through also my family and my parents. My grandmother was a great, faithful person too, my father's mother. She had great faith, and I felt that's one of my areas that I have really
So
appreciated.
you're passing that down from
Absolutely. I
generation
want to pass that on to all
generation
grandchildren and every
to your
generation.
children.
Keep the faith and
Yes.
love life.
And your humbleness too.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure interviewing you. And
It's
hope
been
we
a
can-
pleasure
we
working
can-
and working this with you too.
all righty.
You've been wonderful.
Well, take care. And we want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. And we'll go from there. And thank you.